Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Kiorkof, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 4 quarterback rankings for the 2020 fantasy football season. On today's episode, of course, we're going to be talking about my top 16 quarterback rankings, and then we're going to be talking about some matchups at the quarterback position, giving you guys a little bit of perspective as to which defenses are giving up the most points to opposing quarterbacks in a 4-point per passing touchdown format. And then before we get into talking about all the little quarterback subjects, I wanted to go ahead and talk to you guys about the update between the Tennessee Titans and the Pittsburgh Steelers this upcoming week. That is pretty much what we're going to be talking about. Short and sweet, nothing too big deal. Before we begin, I want to thank you guys for the incredible support. I cannot thank you guys enough. We're almost at 28,000 subscribers. So for those of you who have not yet already, hit the subscribe button, join the community. We're going to be making fantasy football content here on the daily for the entirety of the 2020 season. Again, it'll be Monday through Friday. Saturday, I take my day off, but Sunday morning, we come in strong with Kickoff with Kiorkof. For those of you who want to come hang out before kickoff, get a couple of your questions answered in terms of rankings that are being updated, and or get your flex questions answered potentially. We're going to be there 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We do this every Sunday. So for those of you who are interested, you can come join us Sunday mornings, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Kickoff with Kiorkof. Outside of that, again, make sure you smash that like button. I know there's a lot of you guys that watch these videos, but a lot of you don't click the like button. I'm telling you, it really does make a difference to me. If I've helped you out in any way, please reciprocate that help by not only just hitting the subscribe button, but hitting that like button, really helping me out. I appreciate it. Okay, so let's go ahead and really quickly, let's talk about the Titans and the Steelers' current situation. As of this moment, and as of this morning, the information that I read from Adam Schefter on Twitter was that the NFL has decided to postpone this game outside of Week 4. So they are not going to be playing this upcoming week. I know they had rescheduled the Sunday game to Monday, and then the potential of Tuesday was in sight, but due to the fact that other players and personnel in the organization have tested positive for COVID-19, they will not be participating in a game this week. They're going to reschedule that game. This is a pretty big deal in terms of fantasy. Of course, your Ben Roethlisbergers, your Connors, Juju Smith, Derrick Henry, Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, Eric Ebron. There's a lot of great prospects that we covered already this week, and that I was going to talk about, today in terms of quarterbacks and tight ends that will not be playing this week. Now, just imagine it's a bye week. Next week, we have the Lions and the Green Bay Packers on a bye week, but this week we'll have the Titans and the Steelers. Just imagine it that way. I know it throws a wrench into many of your guys' systems. This is typically why you don't want to have too many eggs in one basket in terms of a team. If you have 3 Tennessee Titans, you have 3 Pittsburgh Steelers, this is going to hurt you. So hopefully you were prepared, with all the information that has come down the pipe this entire week. Regardless, the precedent that I guess the NFL is currently setting, if in fact COVID-19 is going to affect the team, they're probably going to postpone it if in fact the multiple players are continuing to get tested positive. Now, if in fact, let's say for example, later in the season, the Tennessee Titans once again pop up with COVID-19, are they going to be granted another bye week? This could be a precedent that they set that this season might not even just be 17 weeks. They might be playing 16 games in 17 weeks, but honestly, this regular season might be an 18, 19 week slate in which teams that had to postpone early may be playing later down the line. So again, you could end up having a player that ends up missing 2 games because they have 2 separate bye weeks, one that they originally had in the beginning. Like let's say, for example, the Lions and the Packers, they have a bye week next week, but let's say 4 weeks down the road, somebody on the Lions gets popped for COVID-19 and the team can't play. You have yourselves an organization there with 2 bye weeks affecting your fantasy roster, and it's nothing that we can affect, but we always got to be prepared. We always got to have enough depth on our bench to be able to at least rotate or adjust accordingly. We're going to just roll with the punches, and that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about regarding that. As of right now, let's go ahead and let's start talking about some matchups of the quarterback position going into Week 4 of the 2020 fantasy football season. Just to kind of give you a little bit of perspective, the Atlanta Falcons are giving up the most points to opposing quarterbacks on a weekly basis thus far this season in a 4-point per passing touchdown format. As of right now, they're giving up 34.14 fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Of course, they've had a very tough schedule thus far this season, playing against Russell Wilson in Week 1, Dak Prescott in Week 2, and just this past week, Nick Foles in his third and fourth quarter comeback had himself 3 passing touchdowns, played very well against that secondary. This upcoming week, again, the Darqueze Dennard, one of their starting cornerbacks, and I don't even know if A.J. Terrell has been cleared off of the COVID-19 list. Their top two cornerbacks could be out this week playing against the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams potentially coming back. That is a fantastic matchup for them this upcoming week. The Seattle Seahawks have been struggling against opposing quarterbacks. Ryan Fitzpatrick may be able to take advantage of that. Of course, that secondary has been struggling and forcing a lot of shootouts. You see number 4, the Miami Dolphins. This is definitely going to be a shootout between the two teams. Russell Wilson, who has been absolutely incredible thus far this season, is going to be able to take advantage of that. The Dallas Cowboys giving up a lot of points. Maybe Baker Mayfield can have himself a step-up game here. But again, just to give you some perspective as to which quarterbacks this upcoming week can be viable plays. As of right now, I see a lot of quarterbacks that we're going to talk about today that are involved in this specific situation. Starting out with number 12, the Green Bay Packers giving up a lot of points. That's Matt Ryan getting himself a potential boost here. Cleveland Browns and Dak Prescott. The Baltimore Ravens. Actually, you know what? Not that many. Now that I kind of thought about it. I mean, I guess Detroit playing against Brees, New Orleans playing against Stafford, the Jaguars against Burrow. We'll talk about Burrow later today. But there's a good amount of players here. To kind of give you a little bit of perspective as to some of the quarterbacks that may not be having the greatest upcoming week this week. We have the Chicago Bears and the Indianapolis Colts giving up the fewest points to opposing quarterbacks thus far this season, which is an interesting stat because they both play each other this upcoming week. Could be a very heavily defensive intensive matchup between the two. In which neither quarterback is succeeding. It could just be a heavy run game and a defense game. We haven't seen one of those thus far this season. As of what we've kind of witnessed, a lot of the overs have been occurring in terms of the point spreads. So, we'll just have to wait and see how everything kind of pans out for these teams. But again, Tampa Bay's been, playing pretty well against opposing quarterbacks. So has San Francisco. The Las Vegas Raiders, the only reason they have been playing quote unquote well against opposing quarterbacks or not giving up a lot of points is mainly because the running game has been so effective against them in the last couple of weeks. Same thing with the Carolina Panthers. Again, you don't have to really throw against them if your running game is going to succeed as well as it has. Anyway, we can go ahead and move on. We can start talking about my Week 4 quarterback rankings. As of this moment in time, my number 1, it shouldn't be a surprise, it's Russell Wilson. In the last 3 weeks, he's thrown 14 touchdown passes. On a 16-game basis, if he was to keep pace, which I know this number doesn't make sense, he would technically throw 77 passing touchdowns this year. What does that exactly mean? Andrew, is he going to accomplish that? Absolutely not. That means the decline is coming. Eventually, Russell Wilson is going to fall off a cliff in terms of production. He's not going to be throwing 5 touchdown passes every single week. Now, he did something similar last year. In the first 8 games of the season, Russell Wilson was one of the top 3 quarterbacks. And then after that, he had a little bit of decline. Later in the season, they ran the ball a little bit more. Eventually, he's going to end up, not throwing 5 touchdowns and winning you weeks. But as of right now, they play against Miami. It's going to be a pretty easy matchup. They're going to let Russ cook, as many of you guys, put the little hashtag down below. But regardless, I think Russell Wilson in automatic play has been playing absolutely fantastic. And once again, has a great matchup. I'm telling you, we just got to wait until he eventually starts putting up 2 touchdown games, and a lot of people's teams are going to start falling apart. Regardless, we move on to number 2. We have ourselves Lamar Jackson. I know Lamar Jackson had a very rough performance against the Kansas City Chiefs defense, but this upcoming week he takes on the Washington football team. I expect Lamar Jackson and this Ravens offense to get back on track. They need to do that by establishing the run game. Let's not forget, last year, the Baltimore Ravens broke the record for having the most rushing yards in a single season by an NFL team in NFL history. I mean, this team was a run-first team, and they've kind of gotten away from that. They're really haven't established themselves as a running team in my eyes. They haven't been giving their running backs enough opportunity. We haven't established an RB1 in that team. Whether the RB1 is Lamar Jackson or J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Mark Ingram, it does not matter to me. As long as they establish an RB1 and end up kind of being able to pick up some yards on first and second down so that they don't force Lamar Jackson into these 3rd and long situations in which he's getting in trouble. Again, Lamar Jackson this week should have himself a little bit of a redemption week, get a little bit of frustration out, of course, because of that Monday night beatdown that they took against Kansas City. Regardless, I think Lamar Jackson will have himself a pretty good comeback week here. My number 3 as of right now is Patrick Mahomes. Again, he had himself a fantastic week in week 3 against that Baltimore defense. As of right now, he's matchup proof. Regardless of who he plays. And this upcoming week, they play against the New England Patriots secondary, Bill Belichick, Stephon Gilmore, Devin McCourty, I don't really see that as a problem. There really hasn't been a defense that they've put, or anybody has put in front of Patrick Mahomes that slowed him down. The plethora of weapons he has, whether it's Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of the backfield, Sammy Watkins, Demarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman, And even Eric Fisher is catching touchdowns, their left tackle. It does not matter what they put in front of him. He's been absolutely fantastic, and going into this upcoming week should be great. On top of the fact that he's gotten it done through the air, 4 passing touchdowns last week and 385 passing yards, he had himself 26 rushing yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown. That in itself, the mobility that he has shown over the last 2 weeks at the Chargers organization against them, had a couple of those 3rd and longs in which he picked up yards with his feet. Being able to do that makes you that much more of a dynamic quarterback in a 4-point per passing touchdown league. It makes him that much more valuable for fantasy owners. We move on to number 4, Josh Allen. As of right now, Josh Allen's the number 2 quarterback in fantasy, and it shouldn't really be that big of a surprise. Their schedule has been relatively easy as of thus far, playing against the Jets, the Miami Dolphins, and then the Rams. I know they played pretty well against the Rams. That is a pretty good defense in my eyes. I know I'm a Rams fan, but regardless, I think they played very well against them. Made a pretty good comeback at the end there to make sure you could solidify that win that should have been in the bag in the first half after their performance. It doesn't really matter. I think Josh Allen this upcoming week playing against the Las Vegas Raiders, regardless of the Raiders giving up how much they do on the ground and the potential of Devin Singletary and Zach Moss having themselves great games on the ground, Josh Allen is a touchdown machine. He's going to throw the ball regardless of what they're playing against. And I think this upcoming week against Las Vegas will once again have himself a pretty good game. Last week, his stats kind of speak for themselves. It's the 3rd week in a row where he's had 300 plus passing yards. Another week in a row where he has 4 passing touchdowns, had himself a rushing touchdown. Again, he is the goal line back for this team. He's going to continue to be that. Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, I'm sorry. You're probably not going to have too many touchdowns this year. If you're going to have one, you're going to have to break out a 30-yard run, because as soon as you get in the red zone, it's all Josh Allen from there on out. We move on to ourselves having Dak Prescott at number 5. Dak Prescott, again, plays against the Cleveland Browns secondary. We talked about them all season long. They have been struggling with injuries in the back half. But again, regardless of whether or not they're healthy and ready to go, Dak Prescott's got himself an army of receivers that can do it all. Whether it is Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb on a week, they can move on to Michael Gallup and Cedric Wilson and find great performances. Dalton Schultz having himself a little bit more momentum as the weeks go on. You get yourself Zeke involved in the passing game. Even without Tyron Smith, their left tackle and the blind side of Dak Prescott, they've been pretty decent in terms of offensive line protections. So as of right now, going into this upcoming week, I have a lot of confidence in him. Again, last week against Seattle, he threw for 472 passing yards. That is an insane number. We know Dak's mobility. Last week, 26 rushing yards. The week prior had 3 rushing touchdowns. It's always going to be a possibility. And I think as of right now, with the Dallas secondary not playing well, with the Cleveland secondary not playing well, this is going to be a little bit of a back and forth matchup in my eyes. And I think Dak Prescott definitely up for the task, because he's been doing it for the last couple weeks against Atlanta and Seattle. He's ready for another shootout. We move on to number 6, Kyler Murray. Unfortunately, Kyler Murray turned over the ball quite too many times last week, having himself, thrown 3 interceptions. It's pretty rough. But Kyler Murray is going to always be able to throw interceptions and redeem himself with the fact that he's going to always come out and eventually get himself some rushing yards, did 29 yards, and a rushing touchdown, always stealing Kenyon Drake's. This upcoming week, they take on the Carolina Panthers. They are in a tough defense. I expect them to run the ball. I expect them to at least find success in the running game, be able to get Kenyon Drake a couple yards and potential touchdown this upcoming week. But I think with this offense, the way that it's been built, if and when these Carolina Panthers team are biting in on the run because they are getting gashed, they're going to open up a lot of opportunities for DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray, that combination to fall through and have themselves a pretty good week here. He's another one of these quarterbacks that you're starting regardless of the matchup. And it's a pretty soft matchup in my eyes. All right, another soft matchup. Aaron Rodgers takes on the Atlanta Falcons. I think Aaron Rodgers could easily be a top 5 quarterback this week, but obviously he doesn't have the upside of the rushing touchdown very often, unless they're on a 1-yard line, or unless the defense falls asleep, or he doesn't really have the upside of getting any rushing yards. So as of right now, we'll sit him at number 7, because again, Aaron Jones could end up taking a couple touchdowns here and there, because Atlanta's defense has not been great all around. They've got a couple plays here and there in which they've shown to have a pretty good tendency in stopping the run. But I think the way that Aaron Rodgers, this offense is going to function against that secondary, it's just really going to force them to either have to step up or potentially just get blown out and have to make a comeback in the second half. I really don't see the Atlanta Falcons being able to stop Aaron Rodgers in this offense this week. Again, Aaron Rodgers has been playing fantastic football. Last week, 3 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions. 283 passing yards. Great numbers all around. Continuing to stay consistent even without Devontae Adams against a pretty good secondary and team in the New Orleans Saints at New Orleans. I think Green Bay should be in pretty good hands this week with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. They move on to Deshaun Watson. Now, I think Deshaun Watson, as of right now, after those last couple weeks of competition, playing against Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, his slate going forward should be easy. I mean, that was the buy Deshaun Watson low time. I mean, you can still buy him low going into this upcoming week, but I think Deshaun Watson from here on forward should probably be a top 10 quarterback every single week with his production. Again, even against Pittsburgh last week, showed a lot of tendencies of being able to get out of the pocket, make some plays with some receivers that even though he doesn't have a DeAndre Hopkins right now, is still able to get the job done with Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, and Randall Cobb. Hopefully, and even like guys like Jordan Akins. I mean, they're eventually going to get themselves more involved and in better matchups, in bigger shootouts. Deshaun Watson is going to step up to the task at hand and be able to deliver some big performances. I expect them to go against Minnesota this upcoming week and potentially have themselves a pretty big game. Minnesota's secondary has not been playing well as of the last couple of weeks, so I think Minnesota could definitely go ahead and have themselves, or give up themselves, a couple points, a couple yards here and there to Deshaun Watson that a lot of people may not be expecting to see. We move on to number 9. We have Matt Ryan, Matty Ice. Now, obviously, Matty Ice's potential and or high upside is going to be based on whether or not Julio Jones is going to play. But as of right now, we don't have 100% indication of whether he's going to play. There could be a practice report later today or tomorrow that is going to kind of give us a little bit more information regarding that. But regardless, I think as of right now, Matty Ice still another one of these quarterbacks that is a must play, especially when you go against Green Bay. I expect them to get blown out. That's going to give a lot of opportunity for Matty Ice to either throw interceptions or touchdowns in the second half. Probably a little bit of both. And either way, as long as Matt Ryan is throwing himself 2 to 3 passing touchdowns, he's going to make up for any turnovers or mistakes he makes. Whether it's Julio or not, they're still going to have Calvin Ridley, Hayden Hurst, and a plethora of other wide receivers they're going to have to figure out with. I mean, I'm hoping Julio plays because if he does, Matt Ryan's an even better quarterback this week. But I'm still playing him because of the matchup and the game script on hand this upcoming week. Drew Brees is my number 10. Now, as it currently stands, I'm thinking that there is a very high likelihood that we see Michael Thomas play this week. He's been eyeing the number. Now, if in fact something happens in terms of complications, he re-injures himself, and or they don't feel comfortable playing him as of right now, because again, this is a very long season. No point in bringing back your player if in fact you're doing fine. I know they've lost their last 2 games, but maybe they don't need him against Detroit. That being said, I think Drew Brees this upcoming week with Michael Thomas in the lineup, with the way that Alvin Kamara has been playing, Jared Cook being out with an injury, they're definitely going to need Michael Thomas to come in and potentially come in and make some plays. I don't know if Jared Cook's going to be completely out. I've been hearing some whispers here and there, but we'll just have to kind of play that by ear. I think Drew Brees against Detroit, a lineup and a secondary, again, they don't really got much. They're pretty banged up themselves. It's a pretty good matchup and a pretty good play. We go to Cam Newton at number 11. I'm worried about Cam Newton because I just saw what Kansas City did to Lamar Jackson. I think to myself, well, if Cam Newton gets shut down, I'm not going to be surprised because, again, that defense played well. They blitzed a lot. They brought a lot of pressure. And if, in fact, Cam Newton is going to crumble under the pressure, that could be a problem. Though, the biggest thing going for Cam Newton this upcoming potentially is the return of James White. Again, Lamar Jackson does not have a dump-off running back to give the ball to. As much as they probably should have J.K. Dobbins in that role, and he has been getting himself more and more involved in the passing game as that running back position there, James White in this lineup is going to be the check down that is going to save Cam Newton this week. And I think that at least gets him into the top 12 conversation because, again, he's always going to have the goal line work. He's always going to be able to at least spread the ball out with N'Keal Harry and Julian Edelman. This upcoming week, I think the return of James White could potentially be a very big upside help for a guy like Cam Newton in a tough matchup. We move on to number 12, Jared Goff. I mean, you play against the New York Giants. Shouldn't really be a surprise. Jared Goff had an incredible second half last week. I mean, in terms of fantasy points, he had 2 passing touchdowns, 320 passing yards, had himself a rushing touchdown. Sure, he's always going to throw interceptions. That's just what Jared Goff does eventually. But again, I mean, it's such an easy matchup against the New York Giants. Should just be a walk in the park for them this upcoming week and just kind of gives them an automatic top 12 play because, again, if Nick Mullins and that second string offense can go into New York and have themselves that good of a performance, I think Jared Goff in this offense with Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Darrell Henderson, Tyler Higbee, and a well-oiled machine of an offensive line as of right now, they should be good to go. We move on to number 13. It's Joe Burrow. Again, Joe Burrow has been throwing the ball about 40 times a game each of the last 2 weeks here. Was it 60 attempts in week 2, 44 attempts last week? Regardless of whether or not Joe Burrow is going to win, he's throwing the ball a lot. Last week had 312 passing yards total with 2 passing touchdowns. That number is going to continue to grow. I mean, he is going to continue to grow as a player. But on top of it, this upcoming week, they play against the Jacksonville Jaguars secondary, a defense that I'm not too, afraid of at all. I mean, Ryan Fitzmagic last week went 12 for 12 passing to begin the game against them last week. So I think Joe Burrow and this offense, yes, they're learning, but they still have a lot of pieces in A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Drew Sample, and Joe Mixon, who could potentially get back on track this week. I think Burrow is going to be able to get his team W this week in a pretty fun back-and-forth matchup. We move on to Ryan Fitzmagic, and I've mentioned Fitzpatrick a lot, and it shouldn't be a surprise that he's on the list. The beard is back, and he's playing fantastic. The last 2 weeks, he's had really good games against Buffalo and Jacksonville. He plays against one of the worst secondaries in fantasy football as of right now in terms of giving up points to opposing quarterbacks and wide receivers. So I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be able to take advantage of that in a bit of a shootout back and forth against Seattle. So he sits at number 14. Again, another one of these guys I'm willing to pick up and play, like we talked about in our waiver wire series earlier this week. Matthew Stafford, another one of these guys that I may want to pick up. Now, Matthew Stafford seemed like a little bit of a better option earlier this week. He was my number 1 quarterback in terms of waiver wire pickups, but that's mainly because I trust Matthew Stafford more than these other guys, but I don't think he has as much of a ceiling as some of these other quarterbacks at this moment in time. I've been kind of thinking about it again. That's why rankings are subject to change every single time, because if and when it comes down to it, I look at a couple quarterbacks. I think, okay, let's see what they've done in the last couple weeks. Sure, you got Galladay back. The running game might not be there. If, in fact, it's not, you might be having to throw the ball more. If you throw the ball more and Marvin Jones and Amendola and Hawkinson don't show up, what are we going to figure out here? Like, what are we going to find out from this Lions offense that we haven't already? We've seen this offense stall out a lot, and I'm just a little bit, precautious with them. I'm just going to, kind of put them out there, say, you know what? If, in fact, Matthew Stafford plays well, which I expect him to, at least better than the rest of the field of quarterbacks, great. But I'm not expecting him to blow the doors off and throw for 4 to 5 touchdowns this week. If he throws for 3, I'll be surprised, to be honest. But he's pretty much like a two passing touchdown quarterback and a pretty safe floor there at number 15. We move on to number 16, Tom Brady. If Ben Roethlisberger was active this week, he'd have the number 16 spot because I think Tom Brady against the Los Angeles Chargers is not an easy matchup. On top of the fact that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will not have Leonard Fournette and potentially Chris Godwin this week, that is a very detrimental duo. I mean, it's not a good formula for success if 2 of your best offensive pieces are going to be out. Sure, you still have Evans, you still have Scotty Miller, who's questionable. But, Justin Watson's going to have to step up. Ronald Jones is going to have to step up. This offense is going to have to step up. And, of course, the defense has to play well because even when they played against Denver last week, Brady wasn't able to put up 50 points. He should have been able to, but I think eventually this week we might see a little bit more utilization of the tight end position. So maybe a little bit more Gronk, a little bit more O.J. Howard. And that in itself is going to help Brady open it up a little bit more. But again, the Chargers matchup is not an easy one. That secondary has been playing very well in the last couple of weeks, giving teams a lot of trouble. So those are my top 16 quarterbacks on the week. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Click that like button. I really do appreciate it. Again, don't forget 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time kickoff with Kiorkof. We'll have updated rankings, all that kind of jazz. Otherwise, you can get all of your questions answered unlimitedly at patreon.com/Andrew Kiorkof. Again, as of this moment in time, I'm doing flex rankings there. We're doing weekly Patreon and /Discord talks and community get together, stuff like that, watch alongs, all that kind of jazz. So if you're interested in content like that, you can go down below, sign up there. Outside of that, thank you everybody for watching. I think later this afternoon I will have the tight end video out, so make sure you look out for that. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Enjoy the day. Should be a very interesting game between the Denver Broncos and the Jets. Thanks everybody for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.